Hey there guys, it's Philly here from Fidelity Factory, and this is going to be the first video in a series of 9 videos where we are going to go through the build of this app that we see here in front of us. So it's a very straightforward app. I have it designed to track team management. You can see certain elements down here where you can see member of our company's name, what project is assigned to them, some comments, and some other data there. And basically, we're going to go through how to make this from scratch, and over the course of 9 videos, and I'll break down what we do video by video. I'll release 1 video per week. But basically, we're going to go through how to, let's say, make a gallery like this, where we can see a bunch of our items. We can search through certain things here, so I could search for items that are just to do with me, or just items that maybe have a keyword like edit inside them. And also we'll be storing all this information in a SharePoint list. So we'll be going through how to create a SharePoint list to store information like this. We'll also be talking about how you actually create an item here. So one of the nice things in this app is we've got this little employee drop down where I can select anyone in my company. And I'm going to give them a project. And I can create that and hit save. I get this lovely pop-up that asks, am I sure I want to save? And actually, if I leave one of these blank, I've also included in some error checking. That's what we'll be looking at on one of the last videos, the error checking that goes with it. But I can hit save, I can hit yes, and it creates a new item out here. So we can see that down there. So over the next 9 weeks or so, we're going to go through each of those. In the first week, we're going to go through simply how to set up our SharePoint list to store all this. The week after that, week 3 really, because this is week 1. Week 3 then we'll be talking about how to create the gallery, what we see in front of us here. In week 4, we'll talk about how to work with this search bar up here and get that to work nicely and search through things. In week 5, we'll talk about patching in week 5, we'll talk about creating the detail screen. So this screen over here, getting this all together. In week 6, we'll talk about patching our items. That's actually saving our items, getting it to connect to SharePoint, saving a new item. And in week 7, after that, we'll talk about how to edit an item. So not just create a new item, but actually go in and edit an item. In week 8, we'll talk about how do we do that error checking so that it doesn't submit stuff that, let's say, is blank. And in week 9, we'll talk about how to do this pop-up so that when I hit save, I get a pop-up that asks me, am I sure I want to save? Very professional, nice feature. So hopefully you stay with us over the course of the next 9 weeks and maybe set aside 30 minutes a week to build this app with us, or maybe wait till they all come out and do them all in one day. Whatever suits you. Hopefully this is an app that should be applicable to a lot of different functions. I picked a very loose topic just so that I could display a lot of features, but it should be useful in many different ways if you've got any real use for Power Apps at all. So join me next week for the very first video where we will be talking about how to set up our SharePoint list. Welcome back to this app tutorial. This is Philly from Fidelity Factory here. Today we're going to go through how to make the SharePoint list for this app that we were looking at. If you missed the last video, check that out. There's a link in the description where we go through the app we're going to build. And our first step will be making our SharePoint list to store all this information here. So step 1 in our process to making a project team management app is to set up the SharePoint list where some of our information is going to be stored. So this app should store, let's say, the name of who's working on my project and what, let's say, piece of work or what project they're actually working on, and some comments. So I'm just going to keep it simple, 3 items. Yeah, so I'm here in SharePoint. This is a SharePoint site that I've set up that I just use for some random things like working on chatbots and different projects. and I'm going to create a new list to store this information. So we're going to create a new list, and I'm just going to call it project team management, and let's put in list at the end. Project team management list. I'm doing it in camel case because I'm not gonna really change it. Sometimes you could change after you set it up. Maybe you could make it space it out and make it read as proper English, but it's not really worth it for me. This isn't going to be client facing or anything. And now it's time to choose, let's say, some of these columns that we want here. I'm going to leave title alone for now, and I'm going to add a new column here for the person. So I'm actually going to use, so we're going to pick it from our company. So I'm going to put in a person column here, and I'm just going to call it our, let's say, our employee. And it's person or group. I'm going to leave it exactly as it is with the allow selection of groups empty because I just want people for now. I'm going to add another column for what project they're working on. That'll probably be a single line of text. And yeah, we're just going to call this project. Single line of text, all looks good there. And then let's add another one for comment. And comment might be multiple lines of text. So let's throw this in as multiple line of text. So I'm going to put in comment. And that's our SharePoint list set up. I'm going to add a little bit of information in here. So let's say, also one nice thing I can do here, because I'm not using that title field just yet. So I'm going to hide my title column and apply that. So that I only see the columns, let's say, that I'm actually using. So I'm going to add a new item in here. Title is currently required. So let's see, might go into my list settings here and actually make that a non-required item. So let's see if we can do that with our title. So let's move our title to be not required. So if you can see what I did there, I went to settings, selected the title column, and I've asked it to be not required. I'm going to hit OK. And hopefully we can return to our project management list. And now hopefully I can create a new item. And title is there all right. We can edit our form and maybe edit the columns that are visible. Once again, I'm going to remove title. Now I'm down to exactly what I want to see here. So my employee, I'm going to pick myself. So that kind of field is picking from anyone that's, let's say, in my company here. So Philip, I'm going to pick myself. The project I'm working on, let's call it the demo video that I'm doing right now. And comment. This is a tutorial video on building Power Apps with SharePoint. Let's save that. That's perfect. And now we've got some item in there that we could show. So that's how we set up our SharePoint list. The next video, we're going to start into our Power App. So hi there guys, it's Powerfill here from Fidelity Factory. And in the last video we set up our SharePoint list, and now we're going to continue on making our project team management app. And yeah, we've got our SharePoint list in place, Phil site over here. So if you are wondering how we set that up, check out the previous video. And we are now going to set up our Power App to actually do this. So I'm going to click New Apps. I'm here in the Power Apps portal at make.powerapps.com. I'm at Apps over here. I'm going to select New Apps, New Canvas app. And this app is all about putting people, managing my team that are working for me. So I'm going to make this app for a tablet, and I'm just going to start off with a blank app. So now this is loaded up. It gives me some information here. I'm going to just skip that and we're going to just start from blank. So straight away I've got screen 1, and I'm going to make this our kind of like our gallery screen. When we come in, it'll show a list of people who I have on different projects. It'll actually just show a list of this information. So let's try that. I'm going to just rename my screen. So I'm going to call it SCR for screen, and I'm just going to call it gallery to start with. So I know that that's my gallery screen. So let's see if we can maybe connect up our SharePoint list first of all. So I'm going to go to my data button here in this tree over here on the left, and go down to connectors and select SharePoint. And SharePoint. And over here, once it loads up, it gives me a few lists. My one was Phil's site here, so that's perfect. And it was the project team management list. So I'm going to connect that up. If you remember, that's what we called our list here inside my SharePoint site. So let's hop back here. I'm going to hit connect. And nothing major is going to happen straight away, but now I'm going to insert my gallery. So my gallery from over here, I'm going to get a, I'm trying to decide between a vertical with some of that information in there already or blank vertical. I'm going to go to blank vertical for now and make it from scratch. So let's just stretch this out across the screen a little bit. We'll have to change all this in a while anyway, like tidy it up. Let's just make sure we can get some information running through this. So now I've got my gallery here, so now let's connect it. So right now it's connected to custom gallery sample. Let's connect it to our SharePoint list. So let's see if we can get our, I think it's project team management. So let's see if we get that list, and there it is. Once I start typing it in, it pops up here. This is all under the items property for that gallery. So over here, items, and let's see if we can connect that up. Project team management list. And now it's connected, but I actually don't have any elements in here to display anything. So let's insert something. Let's insert a label. And let's see if we can get, oh, I've lost my label there somewhere. Let's go back to our tree view now and try and get these things. So sometimes I find I can lose some of these items that I bring in. So sometimes while I'm doing this, I will just put a border on something like this. So I might put 2. So now let's see. This is our title, our this item.title. So that if you remember in our last video, we actually hid the title field. So the title field is blank. So let's see if we can get something else here, like our comment or our actual employee, I think is what we called one of these fields. So employee. So I'm getting an error there. And if you remember, when we set up our SharePoint list, our employee field is a people picker. So it actually gets a lot of information. It's not just a text field. So when I say .employee, it's coming back with, let's say, my email, the picture that goes along with my account. So I need to specify what I really want is actually my display name. So I'm going to add that in there. And there we go. We've got some information here straight away. So this is good because it lets us know that, okay, our gallery is connecting to it. So that's good. And let's grab something else. I'm actually going to just duplicate this. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. So I'm going to have another one. And actually, if you look at this, something weird happened there. Kind of landed outside my gallery. So I'm actually going to put a bit of a border on my gallery. And right now, I'm kind of already a little bit regretting not going with a gallery that was not, let's say, completely blank, because the completely blank one leaves a lot of work here of kind of putting together some of these lines in there like that. That's not bad there. That gives us at least a kind of a border around things. I'm going to insert a little rectangle as well, just to create a border between our two little our different items in this gallery. So let's see if we've got a rectangle here. Here we go. I'm going to stretch this out across the whole width of, tricky to kind of try and grab the thing you want sometimes here. Stretch it out across the whole width of of this item in the gallery, and let's give it a height of just 1. I just want a little thin line to say, yeah, that's where our gallery kind of starts. That's where item 2 will be. So Philip Ryan is there. So now let's go with this next one. I'm going to say this item dot, and I'm going to grab the project, I think is what I called another one of my items in SharePoint. Now I'm getting an error here, and I just remembered I never actually updated something here. So I need to cut this, because that label for some reason landed outside my gallery. So I'm going to try and paste it back in here. Maybe I can't. Let's see if I hit paste there. Now that's good, because now it's back inside my gallery. If you can see here in the tree view, it kind of gives you an idea of what's in that gallery. I'm going to call this project. And that's demo videos coming up. If you remember, that's what I labeled that. I'm going to copy this, paste it. And I've got a third one. There was 3 pieces of information that I had. And this one's comments. So there we've got some comments. So now I've kind of displaying all my information, and you could even put in stuff like maybe last modified, something like that. Might be useful, so I'm going to do that. Put in a new one over here, and let's put in modified. I'll give you kind of a modified date and time, which is super. So now I've got all that information, and I'm actually going to add in a second line here, just that you see the gallery. So back in my SharePoint, I'm going to add in another item in here. I'm going to select a different person I work with here, and their project is, let's say, making a list or something like that. And this needs to be done by 2021, let's say. Just to fill out a little bit of information in here. So now I've got an extra person in there. So now let's go back and see if this updates in our app. So I'm going to hop over to my SharePoint, my connectors here, my data connectors. Click on this little ellipsis, and I'm going to refresh my data. And hopefully I get an extra line now. And if you look at that, now I've got that second item to do with Sean here. So we can see I'm building up this gallery here. It's still, it doesn't look terrific, but it's our information slowly coming together on this. So I'm going to actually maybe tidy some of this up a little bit. Like, let's start laying stuff out the way we want it to look. So I'm going to make my name a little bit bigger. We're not going to have a whole lot of information, so I think we can make stuff a little bit larger where we need it. I'm going to get rid of these borders off everything, because they serve their purpose when we were, let's say, getting it together, so that you don't lose a blank label on the screen. But after that, I don't think we needed them. So I'm going to put my name there, and actually maybe I could do something interesting like, let's copy this and paste this. Just going to make a copy of that label. And let's get some other information, see what other information we can get out of that people field that we have. Get our email, our job title. Not sure if we'll have any job titles assigned here or anything. So maybe we could do, yeah, well, maybe we're not going to do a whole lot. If I do that picture, it gives me, because I've got a label, maybe I could do a media. Let's put in an image. Let's cut that. And let's put it in here. And let's see if we could do maybe that. If we do, and what is my list name is called Project Team Management. So I'm going to go on that image item, Project Team Management.list. Or let's say this item, I believe, is what I really need, because it's in here. It's in on my gallery. So let's go with this item. Dot employee. So I'm going to go to my employee item. And let's see if we can do that picture. Let's see what comes up. I think I have my picture set, so hopefully something pops up. And that's pretty cool. So we've got our picture here. So I'm going to lay out my screen a little bit like this, where I'm going to move my picture in under here. And we can maybe put together a few other little line items, but there's my demo video and comments and my modified. Maybe we could make this a lot smaller. I'm not sure, let me think. So if we have got Philip Ryan there, maybe we could put we actually could make this a lot narrower maybe. But because we're using this screen, maybe we'll keep it wide and maybe keep things short. So let's move this over here. Let's move my picture and just make it a little thumbnail beside my name. So something like that, and let's then narrow up everything else. And see how that looks now. So different things then we could do to make this look a little bit nicer. Let's look at this rectangle down here. And yeah, I'm going to make it, let's say the width. Why don't we make it parent.width? That way it'll kind of always be the width of our gallery, which kind of is handy. Parent.width, which means it'll always kind of cover over there, assuming that we also make our x value 0. So that's perfect. So now we've got this kind of gallery going on. Maybe we could do something a little bit nice now with our kind of how it's presented. Let's tidy up this page a little bit before we move on too much. Let's put in a little headline part. Let's put in something like this. Let's make it purple. So all I've done there is I put in a label. I'm going to put in a purple part, and let's make our writing white. Let's center our writing and let's make it somewhere around 30. And I'm just going to call it the project team management app. So I have that across the top. And here are all our items that we've got going on. Let's see if we can make a little more sense out of what this is. I'm going to move this over here because I'm actually going to add in one extra thing here as well. I'm going to add in a little arrow that you can click that will, let's say, take you into a certain item so that you could edit it. So let's see, where is my arrow here? Let's say pick this one here. Let's put this over here so that you could click on that item and it'll bring you into it. I'm going to just add a little bit of padding on every side, so that padding is handy because it'll kind of make it smaller. I don't want my arrow as big as that, but also it kind of keeps the clickable area quite large. So I'm going to put 10 padding on every side, and even though my arrow is small, you can see I can still kind of click a lot of that area and it's still going to be responsive, so that's great. I'm going to move my date over here. Tidy it up to the top a little bit. Let's stretch this out a little bit, my comments. I'm going to move that up a bit as well. I'm going to move my demo video, my title, to here. And I actually might put my picture to the left hand side of my name. So now we can even tighten this up even more. Let's move our rectangle up a little bit. And let's move this up. And this up. And now we've got this really kind of tight layout of everything here, which is nice. I'm going to bold up my name. And finally, I'm going to put in some little headlines here so that you know what is each part here. So let's just grab a label. And this is going to be my name. So I'm just going to call this name. And this is and I'm just copying that and pasting it across. This is the project I'm on. And this is the comments. And let's go again, and let's take the very last one is last modified. Just gonna say maybe modified date. No, last modified is probably good. Last modified. And let's give each of them. I'm gonna try and keep everything together. So I'm gonna make them all Lato, and I'm gonna make these all semi-bold. And same, I'm gonna try and keep all my fonts that we use here as kind of just one standard font. So let's go with that Lato font. Same at our top here. Try and keep a overall theme going through the app. Okay, so that's my gallery, let's say, laid out so far. What I'm going to do next, what I'm going to do off camera, is rename all these labels so that there's something that I can understand. Because right now, when we go to, let's say, put some code in on these things, it's going to be a nightmare to to look through these labels and try and figure out that. Because after this, what I want to do is actually put in, let's say, a search bar that we could search some of this information, so that we can kind of actually filter through all our different different projects and people who are on the projects. So that's in the next video. I'll see you then. Okay, welcome back to, I think, the third video on creating this project team management app. In the last video, we set up this screen that you see here. It's the gallery screen. And since then, what I've done just in the meantime is label some of my items here a bit nicer than what I had, so that we can maybe, I'll be glad of it when we start kind of using some more data-driven methods here. So just to go through, I've just labeled like these things across the top. I've named label last modified header, and I'm just going to click through these in case you want to pause and keep yours exactly the way mine is. Label name header is that item up there. Label header is just that whole purple bar at the top that I put in that has the name in it. And then we've got our gallery, and here's all the items in our gallery. And this is something we didn't really talk too much about, but the tree view kind of lets you know, here's my screen, here's items that are sitting on my screen, here's my gallery, here's items that are actually in my gallery. So I'll label that icon, that little arrow out there, I'll call it icon arrow. The image of me, or the user's image, is image user pick. Label modified, label comments, label project. Rectangle spacer, rect spacer is just what I've called this thing here that runs along the bottom to space out my different items, and label username. So in this video, what we're going to do is create a search bar our search box that'll let me search through all the different, let's say, project items I've got here. I just added a few extra in SharePoint just so that I'll have a list of stuff to actually search through to demonstrate. Anyway, to begin with our search box, I'm going to add in a new input, and it's going to be a text input because it's somewhere, and I've made a slight mistake there because I actually entered it in on the gallery. That's why it came up on everything. I just want this at the top of the screen. So it's going to be something where a user can type in and get back some, do some searching. So I've just added that text input. And now I'm going to get rid of kind of the default text that's in there, that text input. I just want it to be blank once it starts up. And maybe we could even add a label beside it that tells us it's a search bar. So let's put in a label and let's put in the word search in here. And that should kind of help make things clear as to what's going on. I'm going to just make my border just the same color as everything else, keep everything kind of neat. And I'm going to take off the border radius. Border radius is what gives it those round edges. I don't know, I just like sharper edges. So instead of 5, I'm going to put in a 0. And it gives us that kind of sharp edge. So my search bar, I'm going to go to Well, actually, even though this is where, let's say I'll be doing my searching and typing in stuff in there, I put the code that drives the search bar and the filter on my gallery here. And also one other thing is right now my gallery is displaying information directly from my SharePoint, which isn't ideal because let's say when every time I do a call then, or let's say search or press something, my app will make a call to SharePoint. And it can just be quite taxing on the app. So what I'm going to do first is use a collection. So I'm going to go to my app on start and I'm going to do a clear collect. And I'm just going to call this call, and I'm going to call it project management. So I'm going to keep it very similar to what we have, project management list. Right now, we're using SharePoint list called project management list. I'm just going to call this call project management list, which is just going to collect my project management list from SharePoint when the app starts. So right now I'm in the app and I'm in the app on start event, which means when the app kicks off, it's going to gather up all this information and make a collection that'll live inside the app. So it doesn't have to call outside the app. So it'll be a little bit of a strain on it at first to gather up all the information, but then as you use the app, it doesn't have to make any calls outside of itself, so it should run smoother. It also helps with some of the search items. You get less delegation issues. So now I'm ready. I'm going to go back to here where I've got my project management list. Unfortunately, I'm going to get rid of that because I no longer want to draw this straight from my SharePoint. I'm going to draw from that collection we just made. So just to be clear, I'm clicking on my gallery and I'm on the items element of the gallery, and I've just deleted everything. But what we're going to now present is the call project management list, and it should work the very same way. And let's see, I'm going to hit a run on start and let's see if we can get this to run. So let's go to my app and run on start. That'll kind of gather the information up as it's coming in, and there we have it. So run on start will do that, kick off that on start event, in this case creating that collection. And we can see it's no different now than what it was running straight off SharePoint. So now let's put in our search bar element. So when we search and when we type something in here, we want to filter our collection based on what we search, based on what we type in. So I'm going to filter my collection based on my, and actually what I'm going to do now is keep on top of my labeling here. I'm going to call this rename the label beside my search bar. I'm going to call label search. And my actual search bar, I'm going to call it rename txt search bar. And here's where it's getting clear why you need to kind of keep on top of, let's say, labeling things correctly, is because now that I'm at the point where I want to use some elements in my code, I don't want to be using like text box underscore 1 underscore a or something like that. I want it to be clear and easy to grab. So I've got filter my call project management list, and I want to filter it by that search bar. So txt search bar is what we call it. So txt search bar, and I'm going to look up the text. So search bar dot text, and where that's in the different elements of my list. So where my search bar dot text is in my username, which is like, let's say, the employee, I think we call it, is in employee. And we're going to need the dot display name, because if you remember, that employee field in SharePoint is actually a people picker. So it has like your display name, your email, it comes with your picture and things, it has a whole lot of information. So I'm going to specify that I want to search by, let's say, just my employee name. Let's see what happens with just that much. So now I'm going to close my bracket and let's just see. So now I should be able to search by employee name. So if I search just for, let's say, Brad down there, once I put in a B, that's all I get is Brad. Perfect. And if I wanted me, there we go. So this is working really nicely. So now let's add in, I might want to search by my project, I might want to search by my comments. So let's try that. Let's add in those extra elements. So if it's in my display name, let's put in an or if my txt search bar is in my project. And actually I want search bar dot text is in my project, or txt search bar. Let's even do the comments. Search bar dot text in comments. And the in is useful because it's checking, is this anywhere in there? It doesn't have to be an exact match or anything. So now if we, let's say, look for a project, this one where I'm making a model driven app, so I want to look up all the items that have model driven app in the name. Perfect. Okay. These three have the word this in them. That last one doesn't. So if I search this, hopefully I should only get those three. And as you can see, my search bar now is filtering nicely, so I can filter by any of these fields, which is great. So that's where we're going to leave off to this video. We've now got our search bar, and in the next video we're going to put together how to create a new item. So how we're going to actually create a new one of these without having to go to SharePoint. So far I've been having to kind of put them into SharePoint myself. But we're going to create a new screen where we can actually input a new person and their project ourselves. Okay, welcome back. It's Philly here at Fidelity Factory, and we're going to continue on with our project team management app. So far we've created kind of the gallery and a search bar where we can search through our different items. Today we're going to create the detail screen where you could create a new item here, create a new project team management item, or edit one. We're going to create that screen. So first thing, let's put in a button here so that we can maybe create a new one. So I'm going to actually move my search bar over a little bit. I might even move it to the left for now. I want to put in a button so that we can maybe create a new item. So I'm going to put in this plus sign. Pretty self-explanatory, a plus symbol that it's going to be to create a new item. Let's keep it square, as square as possible anyway. So let's go 15, 50, 50 and 50 just for its width and height, just because when I moved it there it lost some of its shape. I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to make it that nice purple that we have everything else kind of flowing with. So let's put it that purple. And we might even want a little bit of a label, something to make it even clearer that this is to create a new item. And that should be fine. So create a new item. So we want it so that when we click on this, we'll be navigated to a new screen. So let's put in a new screen. So new blank screen. I'm just going to call it SCR detail. So that's where we're going to add in the details of our app. And so when you click this, this new little symbol we put in, it's called icon 2 here. Let's rename this. ICN new item. And something's ITN. Perfect. And the label beside it will be just label new item. So rename this as label new item. And what I want to do is when I click that plus button, the on select property, I'm going to want that to navigate to our new screen. So I'm going to put in navigate to our screen detail. We might even put in a navigation, let's say a cover, screen transition cover. Let's see how that looks. So now when I'm here, I want to create a new item. I'm going to click this, and it brings me to that new item. I actually like that it goes kind of right to left. So now we're back at the we're at this kind of new screen detail, and ready to kind of this where we're going to put in a little form where we can edit or create a new item for this. I'm going to go back to my gallery screen. I'm just going to steal the heading because it's quite handy to just steal something like that, and it keeps kind of the app looking uniform throughout, which is always good. So I'm just going to put in this is just, let's say, details, because this way we can view and edit the details of these different line items. So let's have a look in here. One thing here is I'm going to do this via form. I'm going to do my editing using a form. You could do it using different labels and inputs, but one thing that's preventing me maybe from doing that as easily is the fact that I want to have a people picker, and that will work best with a form. So I'm going to put in my edit form, because I'll want a drop down where I can select anyone, and a form does that really easily. So I'll be able to select anyone from my company, and it'll work quite nicely. So I've just added in my form. I'm going to select a data source, and I selected a form, and I selected an edit form. So I'm going to go to my data source over here, and I'm going to select my actual SharePoint list over here. So that gives me these few items here laid out like this. Forms can be slightly tricky to kind of make work the way you want them to work, but there's a few settings over here that we can edit. So right now it's set to 3 columns. I think we'll just want 1 because we don't have that much information to squeeze on. We also don't really need that attachments field down there, which is just an automatic field that's added in SharePoint. So how I get rid of that is when I've got my form highlighted over here, I go and I go over to fields on the right and edit fields. That attachments column there, click on that ellipsis and we can kind of remove it. This is also a nice way of ordering what comes when. So I could maybe put my project above my employee if I wanted, my employee above my project, and you'll see it changes the order of things on the actual form. You could spend quite a long time trying to click and drag. These things can be quite frustrating until you realize that it can be ordered there. So with that done, now I'm going to actually just get some of my coloration together. So my chevron color on this, I want to be purple, and I want the border to be purple as well. So I'm going to go with my purple color. Let me go back. Right now it's locked out. I wonder why. Let's see if we can figure out why. The border color, so I've just highlighted that and I'm going up to my border color property, and it has this in a parent.error, parent.border color. So let's see if we can edit our parent border color, which I assume is on the form in general. So let's see if we've got our border color here, whether we can edit that. So let's go to properties, see if we change our border color there. Hopefully it changes everything else. A little bit hard to tell if they're purple. I don't think they are. So then after that, my next guess would be maybe we click on each of these actual the kind of data cards it's held in each of these lines, and I think this is where we need to change it. So now I'm seeing it update. So not just on the big form, but actually on each of your items will have a little package that holds it, and we can change our border color there. So now we've got our 3 fields here, and hopefully they're working as we want. But one thing that's happening here is when I go to play it, no items display. So if we look at our form, our default mode is edit. And for now anyway, let's set our default mode to new, so that when we see this form, it should always think it's a new form and something we can kind of select from. So now I've got these fields that we can select from. Let's say our employee field here. It's really neat the way this works. I can search for me or Sean or anyone in my company. So that's really cool. It knows, because the way we've set it up in SharePoint as a people picker field, it knows that we can select anybody from our company there. So I could select myself, project, this video, right now that we're watching and comment it's recording. Now, next thing is we'll need something to submit, a button to actually press. I'm going to select a button from up here and put it down somewhere around here. And we're going to need this button. I'm going to fill in the color, let's say, make everything match as always, that purple here. And I'm going to change the text property on my button to, let's say, so. I'm going to change my text to say save. And now, in the next video, we're going to go through what code actually needs to be on this button, a patch statement, to write to our SharePoint. So for now, I'm going to leave it there. The main takeaway from this video is just setting up these fields, and that people picker is probably the most complicated thing in there. And one other thing we set up was also that when we click this button over here, it brought us to our screen detail. So that's all for now, and I will see you in the next video to go through how to actually patch this. So welcome back, it's Philly here at Fidelity Factory, and we're continuing on with our project team management app. And today we're actually going to patch our information from our form on our detail screen. We're going to use a patch statement to save it and actually update our SharePoint list. So this is definitely where things get a bit tricky and can get a bit dicey. So let's see how we do. Up till now we've added these lists, so we can this form we can pick anyone here. We can pick someone from our company, set to allow you to kind of search for people. So there's Rem. I'm going to just stick with me. Pick myself, this video, and I've got a project name and a comment. They're just two text boxes, so very straightforward. And when we hit save, we'll want to actually write this to our SharePoint list. So let's look at some of this. So first of all, I'm going to actually rename my little button here so that it's a BTN, and let's just call it save. Just so that it's clear when we're coming back to this in a few months' time what's going on and what that actually relates to. So we're going to go to our onSelect property of our button. So when we click it, when we select it, we want it to actually save. And I'm going to start off by just trying out a basic patch. I'm not going to put in much logic. We're going to come back to this and kind of build this up as we go. But I'm going to patch, and that's pretty much what the term we use for writing to the SharePoint list. So I'm going to patch that list, which is called Project Team Management List. And I'm going to patch that and each of the items in there. So I open up a curly brace here, and you can see it's already kind of guessing what I want to do. So I'm going to start off with my employee. So I want to patch my employee with whatever I've selected here. So that is, let's look at our form. What is that? That's our data card value 9, it's called. No, it's not labeled that nicely. Let's actually give it a nicer name. Let's rename this and call it CBO employee. And it's a bit annoying that the forms don't actually give you kind of nicer named things. Let's name each of these before going any further. Let's rename this as just a TXT project. And let's label the last one as TXT comment. I'm not going to label the other bits around it. I just don't really feel it's necessary right now anyway. So let's get back to our patch statement. So on our save button, now I've got my employee, and I want to take in whatever is selected on my CBO employee. So I'm going to put in CBO employee. Now it's going to need a little bit more information than that. So dot, and what I'm going to select, it's dot selected, and it still has that little red mark. So you see what I'm looking at. And what actually we're going to use to patch this is claims, which is a little bit unusual. It's this big kind of item here, but that's what SharePoint will recognize. It wouldn't recognize your display name or anything because it needs to take in something so it knows this whole record, that's me. It includes my picture, my name, my email, all my information. So claims is what we use for that. The other two should be easier. We're going to patch our project field with, I think we enable this txt project. Now we're going to say txt project.text. That's one thing that you could easily forget. And our comment should be the other field, and we'll want txt comment, and we're going to go dot text again. Close our curly bracket, close our round bracket, and see what it tells us then. Something is missing or wrong, but to be honest, you'd be expecting something like that. So employee found does not match the exact record. So let's see what is going wrong for us here. Dot selected. Maybe we could go with just dot selected for now and see what happens. Oh, and there we go. Just dot selected. Sometimes different things work at different in different cases. Right now, all we actually really need is our dot selected. So interesting. I had overestimated. So now let's see what happens actually. If we got me, we got our project, this video, and here's my comment. Let's see what happens when I hit save. Kind of looked good, looked like something would have happened. There's no red dot there. Let's check out our SharePoint list. Let's hit refresh. And you can see it down there. It's after adding to our list. So, Philip Bryant, this video, here's my comment. So, good feeling when you see that. You know it's actually writing, which is great. Now, one thing is, let's hop back to our gallery. It's not actually visible there just yet because we need to refresh our items. So one way of doing that would be to kind of go over here and hit refresh on the actual data source, but we're going to need this option in the app anyway. So I'm going to add a little reload icon here, and I'm going to pop this down in the bottom corner here. So I'm going to shorten up my gallery, but I'm going to put my refresh button, my reload button down here, like always. Going to make that purple color just uniform. And now on this button, I'm going to do a refresh. And I can actually just give it the order to refresh that SharePoint list. So let's say if I was using this app, I'm not going into that SharePoint list. I can hit this button. And one thing is, it's after refreshing the SharePoint list, but what we're actually showing here isn't the SharePoint list. So we also have to get it to collect up our information as well. So I'm going to refresh our project management list, but also clear collect our call project management list. So I'm going to clear collect that from our project. So now what we're doing is it's refreshing our SharePoint list, but it's also creating our collection again. When we displayed this, we created a collection. And so now when I hit this button, you'll notice it added that last item down here, which is great. Now one element that's in there is that I have not the ability just yet to edit one of my items. So it'll only just create new items. So we're going to have to look at that. So let's do that in the next video. Let's look at editing a new, an existing item. Right now we've just made it so that we can create a new item. Well, in the next video, we're going to show you how to edit a new item. So hey there, it's Philly here at Fidelity Factory. Welcome back to this video on how to create this project team management canvas app. In the last video we covered how to create a new item. In this video we're going to look at kind of how to edit an existing item. So what we have so far is when I click this new button here, it brings me to this screen here, which is called screen detail, and we can enter in, like, let's say a employee name, their project, and a comment to go with it, and then we can save it and it creates a new line in our SharePoint list over here. What we're going to do today is then get it so that when I click on an item in my gallery here, it'll bring me to that page. I have all this populated and I can kind of edit it and then save it and save a new change, which is handy. You might notice that there's this red X here. It's just to do with what we have in there. Sometimes it can give you a slight issue at first, but if we go in and look at this, let's say look at this, and it's to do with this bit of code up here. If we go and look at what's going on in there, let's unlock this. Sometimes you're gonna, when using them forms, they can come locked and you need to unlock them to kind of edit them. When I click up here, it's gonna begin to process what's going on in there, and it should clear off that error after a little bit of time. It's just using that kind of employee searching field can be a bit taxing on it, so at first it'll struggle. So same here, I'm going to actually unlock these fields as we go. So I'm clicking into the text box element and unlocking them because we're going to be using them as we go through today. So first, now let's go back to our gallery screen over here. So far we've got this thing where we click this new button. All we have there is that it brings us to the detail screen where we actually edit the information. We've nothing there right now that denotes that it's a new item or anything like that, so that's something we're going to have to look at. But first, let's have a look down here at this little button here. So when I click on this, I'm going to want it to bring me to the next page and also then gather up all the information that's to do with whatever line I click on. So let's start there. So right now the onSelect of this is parent, but that means it selects the whole bar across, but I don't think we have a whole lot going on the onSelect of our parent. So I'm just going to go in here and edit this information on that arrow there, so that when I click this arrow, it'll bring me to the next page. So let's start with that. That's going to be a navigate to our screen detail. I'm going to pick and navigate, screen transition cover. That's just the style that it's going to slide over. It's kind of like one page slides on top of the other. It's a nice transition. And now what I want to do is gather up all the information. So what I'm going to do is put in these curly brackets. It's going to create a kind of a context variable for us here. And I'm going to call it var display person. You can name it whatever you want. I just pick and display person because we're going into kind of per person, or let's say display project might make more sense. And it's just something that we're going to store, like let's say this project in here, and I'm going to hit these little dots here, and then I'm going to put in, very simple, this item. You'll notice that there's a lot of options here for this item.created, this item.employee. You can get like all the information from this item, but if I just go for this item, it will actually bring over a full table with it that has everything we need. So that's really useful there. So now when I click in that, it's going to, let's say, bring me to that next page because I have the navigate. But if I look up my variables, so let's view our variables up here that we've got going on. var display project, you'll see this little table icon here. And let's see, I'm going to click in here again, and you can see it has all that information that came with it, the modified time, the project name, a bunch of kind of meta information, the comment. So it brings everything with it, so we're able to use it rather than, let's say, setting up one variable to just one different thing at a time. Now let's hop back to our gallery screen again, because now we have it so that when I click in here, it recognizes that there's an existing item and it brings that information with it. But I do need to update my new button so that it doesn't bring any information with it. So let's say on my new button, I'm going to keep this as it is. It has that screen transition cover that I like. And I'm going to, once again, I'm going to update that same variable. So I've put in a curly brace and I can see the variable has been kind of suggested to me there. I'm going to put that in. And I'm just going to make it a blank. So this way, when I click the new button, it's going to not populate any of that information, which is going to be a little bit nicer. So it's going to keep it as blank. So now when I click in here and I click the new button, if I go and view my variable up here, variable var display project, it has no value. it's blank. So it's ready then to take in new information. So now we've got it in such a way that when I click one of these little arrows here, let's click Brad here, it's bringing Brad's information in this variable var display project. Now what we need to do is get it to display that information automatically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into my employee up here, and I'm going to click right onto that text box there, or the drop down. I've called it CBO employee in a previous video. You might have to do that thing we did earlier where we click to advanced and unlock before you can edit. But what I'm going to put in here is look for the default. And on this one, because it's a drop down, there's two. There's default and default selected items. I'm going to go for default selected items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the variable where we're storing all that information, var display project. And I'm going to take out the bit of information I want, which I assume I labeled employee. And there it is, employee. So you can see it's already after auto-populating with Brad's name there. And I'm going to do the same down here on project. I'm going to go, now because project's a text field, I'm just going to go to the default. There's no default selected because it's not really a field where you can select anything. So I'm just going to put in, once again, var display, take that variable. It has all the information I could possibly need. So I'm going to put in a dot. This is where I traverse kind of like what information I actually want out of it. I want the project there. So project, so it's populating that, and I'm going to do the same again with my comment. So once again, go to default, and I'm going to go for var display project dot, and this should be comment. So now I've got this situation that if I hit the play button up here, and actually let's hop back out to my gallery screen. I'm spotting something here that's annoying. I have no control here to actually bring me back to my gallery screen. So right now I can hit save, but nothing's bringing me back. And actually maybe that's something we'll add in now, because then that's when it begins to feel like a proper, let's say, app. So I'm going to go up here to insert. I'm going to go over to my icons. And I want to go back to like the home page. So I'm going to put in this little house image, move it over here. Let's put the text into white, or the color of it as white, just to fit in with the rest of the text or up here on that top bar. And just click on that button, and I'm going to put in a navigate, and we're going to go back to our gallery screen. And I might actually make this a cover right, because it's kind of like my screen transition cover right, so it kind of goes backwards to that home screen. So now I actually can demo my app, and I can actually move freely through it. So I'm able to kind of click that home button, return here. The way we've set it up, hopefully when I click this new button, create new, yeah, it gives me app all blanks there, which is handy. But if I hit my home button, return home, if I go down here and click REM, it gives me the details of REM's app already here, which is great. So it's ready now to be edited. If I click me at the bottom there, it gives me that information there. So this is really handy now. It's kind of set up, ready for me to edit my information. The only thing that's a problem still is that my save right now is just set up to save a new item. So if I, let's say, for example, take the line here that says Sean here, blah, 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 and I'm going to, the project is called making a SharePoint list. If we edited that and said, this is edited now, it's just throwing extra information onto the edit these lines. If I hit save there, it's going to create a span new item. Let's hop back and have a look. I'm going to hit my refresh button down here. It created a span new item rather than editing that item up there, because we don't have any logic on it right now to say that like it needs to be edited, let's say. So let's see what we can do about that. So I'm going to click this button here, and we're just going to have to change some of the information that's going on our save button here. So right now we've got this patch statement, And we're just going to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So what we want to do is check, and the way we're going to do this, we're going to check to see, is there a matching item in SharePoint that matches our, let's say, our var display item that we take when we click a button. So if when we click on our gallery screen, we click one of these buttons, is there a line that matches, let's say, the code that's here, or is it blank? And if it's blank, we'll create a new one. That's the idea of what we're going to write here. So under my save, I'm going to keep that there for now. I'm just going to move it to the bottom. But under my save, I'm going to add a little bit more information. So I'm going to keep my patch actually. Start off with the patch. We're going to patch that SharePoint list. That's our SharePoint list in the background. Project team management list. We're going to patch that. But I'm going to put in an if, because we're going to decide, is this something that exists already? So if we look up our project team management list, so we're going to look up our project team management list, and if the ID of one of those items on that line, so each item in here has a secret ID, it's not shown right now. I can actually go into, on my SharePoint list, go to show high columns, and I can show the ID. That's very simple. It's just like an auto incrementing ID, but it's unique then. It's something we can identify each line with. So if the ID of my project team management list is equal to, let's say, my var display project dot, and that variable takes all the information that took the project name, but it'll also have the ID, so I can see if it matches like that. I'm going to put in a little thing here where it says, well, if it does match, we're going to say, just create a thing that says exists. And I'm sure there's better ways of doing this, but I like this way, it makes sense to me. So if that exists, and so if it therefore equals exists, then what we want to do is, create just edit something that's already there. If it already exists, then what we're going to do is look up our project team management list, where the ID is equal to var display our project. And I know there's a bit of duplication up here, but that's the if up there, and here's our actual kind of working code that's actually going to do the work then. So we're going to look up where our ID in that list in our SharePoint matches the ID in our variable. And otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to what's called defaults, which is create a span new thing. So this is a little line of code that we need to create a new item. So otherwise, if it doesn't exist, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new item in the default in the project team management list. So a little bit tricky, but it's good. And I'm going to close out that bracket to the if statement, put in a comma here, and now I'm going to delete back up towards this. And we actually have everything we need there now. So just to look at it, once again, what we do is we look up our project team management list, and we see if the ID of any item in our SharePoint list matches the ID that's in our var display project. So if I've clicked on an existing something, there should be an ID with it. If I've clicked new, there shouldn't. And if there is, we're going to say it exists. So if this bit of logic equals exists, then what we do is we look up that existing project and we're going to edit it. Otherwise, it's this line here, this defaults. And what defaults does is it tells the system to, let's say, create a span new line item. So now, when I hit my play button, and I'm going to hit home, and I am going to click one of my line items here. So let's click Brad here, and I'm going to edit Brad's project. So I'm going to edit this project, and I'm going to edit this comment. This should recognize now that this is an existing item that needs to be edited, and rather than create a new item, it should edit it. So I'm going to go home here, and we can still see Brad says new project is complete, but I'm going to refresh this, and it's taken a little bit of time, but hopefully it'll refresh this line. Let's see, you can see these dots floating across the top of the screen while it's thinking. And yes, and there it's after updating, so it now says Brad, edit this project, edit this comment. So rather than create a new line item, it's after editing that item, which is great. Now one thing we might do, rather than having to click that refresh button every time we hit this page, why don't we put something in our gallery on our unvisible event. So when this screen appears, we can put in something where we select that refresh button. And I'm not sure what I've called the button. I'm sure I called it something like icon refresh. Let's see, where is it? Down here. Oh, right now it's just called icon 3, so let's rename that so it's useful. Icon refresh. So now when this page becomes visible, we're going to select that icon refresh. So that will select that button and kind of refresh that list automatically. So once again, let's hop into one of these, the very top one, let's say it's called demo video. I'm just going to add the kind of code here, or the words edited. Hit save. And I'm going to hit home. And now you can see it automatically refreshed that, and I can see that that was edited. Similarly, if I want to create a new item, all I'm going to do is click this item here to create new. It'll give me all these blanks. I'm going to put it into preview mode here and select just myself again. Put in, this is a very new item, and this is for demo. And one thing before I hit save here, one thing I've been noticing is when we hit save, it's not moved to the, let's say, back to the other page. So it might be nice to put in a feature here where after it saves, we might put in a bit of code here just to navigate, so that we navigate back to the original screen. So screen, and I think it's called screen gallery is what we have. So this way, once we save it, it'll return us to the gallery. So now let's hit play, and I'm going to hit save, and hopefully that new item will be in down here, and you can see it's down here. This is a very new item, this is for demo, so it's recognizing whether we're putting in a new item or whether we're selecting an existing item. So if I select an existing item, it's populating all those fields and saving there. So that is a lot of that kind of hard work done of creating a new item or editing an existing item, and I hope that helps. So welcome back to this video series on how to make this project team management app. So far we've got most of it done here in terms of we can create a new item, edit existing items. But one thing I want to add in today is some error checking on the information we add in. So right now I could create a new item and I could leave, let's say, the employee blank, the project blank, and just put in a comment and save that. And what I'll end up with is kind of not a great item here that doesn't have an employee, doesn't have a project, and doesn't have a comment. Not ideal. So what we're going to do is put in some error checking to make sure you cannot do that. So I'm going to put it on my save button here, and we're going to look at what's going on throughout the app. So I'm going to put in an if, and we're going to look at each of these fields. So this field here is called our CBO employee. So if our CBO employee is blank, so I'm going to put in, go back down to my save button here. I'm going to check if my CBO employee is blank, CBO employee, and I'm actually going to put in is blank because we want to check is it blank, and make an error if it is blank. So if my CBO employee is blank, and I'm going to make a new variable that, let's say, will set an error to true or false. So we're going to call this update context, let's say, a context variable, and I'm going to call it var employee error. And I'm actually going to lay it out like this. So I'm going to say var employee error, and then on this side of that colon, I'm going to put in if is blank CBO employee. Well, if it's blank, I'm going to say it's true. I'm going to make this variable true, that there is an error, and otherwise I'm going to say false. And I'm going to close that up. And this is going to create a variable that will tell me that that is, if it's empty, if it's blank, that field is blank, this is going to be true. Otherwise it's going to be false. I'm going to do the same for the other two fields. So I'm going to just copy this right now. I'm going to hop down here, put in the second one. I'm going to call it project error, because that's the name of my field down here for project. So I'm going to call this var project error. And I'm going to change this now to be what I would imagine we call this was probably txt project. So if is blank txt project, then we're going to set that variable to true. Otherwise I'm going to set that variable to false. And similarly, I'm going to do the same for my comment. So I'm just going to copy all that and put it in down here. And I'm building up a bunch of variables that will be either set to true or false depending on whether the corresponding field is empty or not. So I'm going to call this var comment error. And if I would imagine this is called txt comment. If that's blank, then we're going to set our variable to true. Otherwise, we're going to set it to false. Now, where this is going to come into play is I'm going to say, I'm not going to let us do any of this patch statement here if any of these errors are actually true. So I'm going to put in an if, and I'm going to say if, let's say var employee error or var comment error or var project error, and that's instantly going to kind of know that, I mean, if these are true, if these variables are set to true. And I kind of want nothing to happen when they're true, and when they're false I want to do the patch. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put another bracket around these, and I'm going to put in a little exclamation mark to say if these are not true, then let's do this patch statement. I don't really have an otherwise statement, so I'm just going to go down to the bottom there beside my navigate screen gallery and close out that. So it keeps my patch statement in here, and what it's saying is really if none of these are true, so if there's no error, then we'll do all this. So right now this should not patch. You should not navigate to the home screen right now because there should be an error. Now one problem here is we can't actually see that there's an error. So what we're going to do is get these to glow red when they are in an error state. So I'm going to go up here into my border color. So on employee, I'm going to go to border color. And right now it's kind of set to stuff that's to do with that form. I'm going to delete that, and that's useful too, but right now this is what we're going to do next. Is going to be stuff you can apply to any sort of field, which is very handy. So I'm going to say if, and we're going to say var, this field here is var employee. So if var employee error, we're going to make our border red. Otherwise, let's leave our border whatever that is. Let's see if we can get a purple by just typing in the word purple. So now, because we've got an error, you can see that that's red. If I fill this in with something like, let's say I pick my name here, let's put in Philip, select me. Now when I hit save, it should do that check, yeah, and it comes back as just purple. Now one issue with that is, let's try and get it to be blank again. One issue with that is, the red is enough, but it's also useful to make our border extra thick as well. So What I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight that again, and I'm going to go up to my border thickness. Right now it's set to 2, and I'm just going to replace that with if var employee error. So if there's an error, I want the border to be 4, otherwise I want it to be 2. That's going to give us this extra kind of thick line, so that if I hit save now, oh, I think I've gotten that backwards, so let's have a look. So if there's a var employee error, yeah, I want it to be 4, otherwise I want it to be 2. And let's look at my color, make sure I've got everything the same. var employee error, so that all looks fine to me. So let's just hit home and try that out again. Let's go back in. If I hit save here, for some reason it's not registering some of that, so let's see what's going on. So it should be setting my var employee error here. And one way of checking that is we're going to insert a little label here, and this way we can check to make sure that things are true or false as they need to be. So let's put in var employee error, and you can see it's coming up as false there, despite when I hit save. So maybe we need to try if is blank cbo employee dot, and I would imagine it's going to be selected, maybe selected items. Let's see. No, let's try something here like selected dot, and here I think we might be onto something here, display name, and I'm going to hit save, and that now is beginning to work for us because it's now recognizing. It's just that element there needs a little more logic. So now if I pick my name once again here, let's put that in. Hopefully that red line will go away and it goes back to being a border thickness of 2. And let's get rid of my name again, and let's see what happens. So if I get rid of that and I hit save, it's going to recognize that we've got an error. So our issue there was that we needed our dot selected dot display name. Now hopefully we don't have the same issues with project here. So let's see. I'm going to get rid of this. Let's actually update this to var project error so we can keep track of our project error. So right now this is set to true. So if I put some similar logic up here, let's get rid of everything on our border color. I'm going to put in if var project error, then I want to be red, otherwise I want to be purple. So hopefully it should recognize straight away that this needs to be red, and it does. We're going to put in something very similar in on our border thickness. We're going to just go for if var project error, and I want this to be red, or actually I want it to be 4, otherwise I want it to be 2, because here we're dealing with border thickness. And while we're going, I'm going to do the same for this comment down here. I'm going to go and sort out our border color, and this will be if var comment error, we'll want it to be red, otherwise we want it to be purple. Same again. Close our bracket, and same for our border thickness. We're going to want if var comment error, we'll want it to be 4, otherwise we'll want it to be 2. So now if I hit save here, well, it's not giving me an error on my comment because I have that filled in correctly. But if I hit save now, all of these are highlighting in red. But as I fill these in a little bit, let's put in select an employee here. Let's put in something like a new project. Hit save. It's beginning to recognize that there's stuff that is getting filled in and fixed. And here's my comment. And now because I've got everything filled in, it should navigate to the previous page and add in that new item. And there it is down there. So that's how to add in a little bit of error checking into our fields here. I'm going to get rid of that little comment box up there. And one thing to note is the way I have it set up, if you get rid of that, make it empty, It's going to be red even when you fill in stuff. It's going to be red until you hit that save button, because that's where that logic is, where we've got some of that checking to see if it's blank or not. You could put in some of those errors, like this text here. You could maybe put that in on the onChange event, which would give you a more instant update. So if I, let's say, go to my comment box here and I go to my onChange and I put in that update comment, so that it'll check right away when I change this. Have I changed it from being blank to having some information? So now when I click away, it instantly recognizes it. And once again, if I make it blank, when I click away, it instantly recognizes it. One thing about that is I kind of like when you hit save, that it's only then that it gives you kind of, let's say, all the feedback. But that's how you add some error checking. Very handy to kind of keep from having any, let's say, unfortunate data inside in your SharePoint list, like here, the blank information. So it'll keep you from having any issues like that. So welcome back to the Project Team Management app tutorial series. This will be the last video, and in this video we're just going to go through how to create kind of a nice pop-up of something over this screen here when you hit save, so that it pops up and says, are you sure? And you can hit yes or no. So right now when I hit save here, it saves our item straight away. And just to give you a reminder, it's an app where we can select whatever item we want here, and in here when we hit save, it saves it. But a lot of the time you kind of need to double check to make sure someone hasn't hit the button by accident. So what we're going to do is create a pop-up, so that when I hit this, instead of running all this code, we're going to do a pop-up where there it runs the code. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to keep all this error checking in here, but I will be moving some of this patch information in a little while. So I'm going to actually comment this out. And to comment out a big series of text here, we'll put that /, a little star, and at the bottom we'll put a star and a /, and it'll just comment out that whole section right there. And instead of this here, what we have is, like right now inside in this save button, on its onSelect property, we have a bunch of our error checking to make sure our employee field isn't blank, our project field isn't blank, our comment field isn't blank. And then we have an if statement, and if none of these things are blank, what I'm going to do now is just put in a new update context kind of variable in here. I'm going to say update context, and I'm going to say var pop-up, because I'm going to want a pop-up screen to come up here. So I'm going to put var pop-up, and I'm going to set that to true. And my keyboard is not catching everything I'm typing in here. I'm after missing a little curly brace here. But now we've got it all together. So I do think we need one more bracket here just to close that thing out. So now when we hit that save button, if there's no blanks in my fields here, it's going to set my thing here, my var pop-up, to true. So my var pop-up is, what I want that to be is kind of a box that pops up that asks you, are you sure you want to save it? And you've got the option of yes or no. So what I like to do here is I like to put a rectangle in first. So I'm going to put in a rectangle in over this, cover the whole screen with it. So I'm going to put this rectangle in like that. I'm going to set it to the color black, but I'm also going to customize it and make it a little bit see-through. So if you see this little line here, allows me to give it set the kind of transparency. So now I've got that little gray box over everything here, and I'm also going to rename that. I'm going to call it rect dark overlay, just to keep it easy to find when we're working with it later. I'm also going to add in another rectangle. This will be like our little text box where we're going to actually have the yes or no information. So I'm going to add in another rectangle. put it somewhere central. There, that looks good to me. And let's make this white, let's say. That looks good to me. So this is the box where we are going to, and I'm going to put that, rename this as well. I'm going to call it icon rectangle pop-up. Something like that. That's going to, or maybe I'll just call it icon pop-up. So ICN pop-up. And this is the box that we're going to display a bit of text. So I'm going to put in a new little label here. I'm going to select label, bring this down here, and I'm just going to put in some text here that says, are you sure you want to save? And let's make that a little bit bigger. Let's make it 20, let's try 30 straight away. And let's try something a little more. Let's try 20. Are you sure you want to save? And let's center it. And I think we can actually maybe make our text box a little bit smaller. And now here I'm going to put in 2 buttons. So I'm going to put in a little button here and another button over here, and just have pretty much a yes or no. So on this button here, I am going to put yes in the text item, and over here I'm going to put no. I'm also going to color these buttons the same as kind of what we've been doing, so that purple color that we've been putting on almost everything in this app. So are you sure you want to save? And yes or no. And really all I want to do now is make sure, well, one other thing that we probably want here is a little icon of a cancel. So even though it'll be the same as hitting no, it's often nice to put in a little button like that so that people have a way of getting out of an app or out of a little screen as well. One thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a bit of padding in on this, because if you look at it, it's a big X, and rather than make it small, because the problem with, if I make it small like that, it makes the clickable area small as well. So what I'm going to do actually is just set my width and height of it to 1770, but I'm going to put a padding of 5 in for top, bottom, left and right. And that should kind of make it a little bit smaller and yet kind of keep the clickable area quite large. And we could even make that a little bit smaller again, so I'm going to try 10, and let's see if 10, 10, and 10, and that's a little bit neater, but it means I can still kind of click any area around it and it'll pick up on what I'm trying to do. So now I've got all these things here that I want. I'm going to rename these a little bit. So I'm going to rename this LBL for label. I'm going to call it label double check, because we're double checking if they're sure. And this button down here, I'm going to just call it button no. So BTN NO. And the other button, I'm going to call it BTN yes. So BTN yes. And icon, I'm going to call it ICN icon exit pop-up. And that way all these things will be easy found for us. Now one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to select each of those little items that I'm just after putting on, and I'm going to group them together. And I'll call it group 1. I'm going to rename my group. I'm going to rename it group pop-up. And why I'm doing that is because I'm going to want them to have some common features. So I don't really want this visible all the time. I want them to kind of go away when I hit this X button up here. So if you remember, when I set up my save button, I set up a var pop-up, and I'll want this to be visible when that's true. So I'm going to go to click on my group, which will set this for all those items in my group, which are all these bits like the button and all that. So right now it says true, but I'm going to actually change that true to var pop-up. This way it'll only show if my var pop-up is true. So right now they're not shown. When I click this, it should set my var pop-up to true. And actually it doesn't, because it's still going on that error checking of checking my employee. I'm going to put in A and B, and now when I hit save, it sets my var pop-up to true, which is really handy. And then similarly, when I hit this X, I'll kind of want that to go away. So when I hit X, that escape on this little pop-up, I'm going to change my onSelect feature there to an update context. I want to set my var pop-up to false. And so now when I hit that X, I should be able to get rid of it. And that's really cool. So I can hit save and it pops up, and if I hit X, it'll go away. Similarly, I want the same feature on the no button. And I know there's kind of like a duplicate of functions here, but a lot of the time for customers, they might be nervous about hitting a no button when it's more clear to them that when hitting an X button like that will allow them to escape. So now, the very last thing is, if I hit save here, I've got all this, I can escape, but I still have no code in on my yes. So at the start of our video here on our save button, we commented out our patch statement here. So it's time to grab that. I'm going to copy that out of there. I'm going to leave it there as well in case anything comes up that we need it, but I'm going to copy it out of there. I'm going to click my save button to bring up this little screen here. And on my yes button, here I'm going to put in my code. So here I'm putting in my patch statement. Hopefully I've got everything I need. I've got an extra bracket down there, you'll notice, because some of it's held on from that if statement that was in that yes button. But now I've got all that, no red lines. So now I should be able to X this off. And let's actually just try something from scratch. So I'm going to try create a new item. And for some reason that isn't refreshing kind of all my different bits, but for now anyway, we're going to be okay, I think. Let me get rid of some of this information. Let's select something new. Let's select Chris here for a project. For Chris. And is a comment. So I'm just creating a new project, trying it out. So I'm going to hit save here. Brings up my pop-up. I'm going to hit yes. It should navigate me out here and create that item down below. And there it is. New project for Chris, this is a comment, and last modified. So there you have it. We've kind of made an app where we can add new features, edit features, and we've got some nice error checking in here. And yeah, so it's great. We've got some error checking so that if we leave anything blank, we can't see it. But we've also got some double checking here so that if I hit save, it gives us this pop-up here. So very nicely easy to use app. We've also got our search bar. So that's everything for this. This is the end of that project kind of series. So let us know what you thought of it. And yeah, we'll be back with more soon.